Okay, so this is the two Tricast wands. I'm calling them as finished now. So the finished article, quick recap of what I've done. So originally both of these had cork handles going all the way. So I cut the on both of them, the original handles I kept to here, then it was removed, stripped down to the blank, and then I used these Fuji lockable, screwable, whatever, reel fittings. Both of the rods, I put these little Fuji hook keepers on. So that meant that this needed to be re-whipped, or whipped, because obviously there wasn't anything there before. Now to get these reel fittings on, then I needed to take both of the eyes, the butt eyes off, so that they would slide down. So in both cases, and we can now see the differences between the rods. They're different generation. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that in a minute or so, but both of them, the whippings obviously needed to be taken off so that the eye could come off, so they've been redone. The whippings here, so just at the top of the joint, the spigot, ferrule, whatever it's called, is the original. So the difference in colour, I know it's not wonderful light, but the difference in colour is minimal. I can't see it, although I'm not particularly good at colours, so I'm really pleased because this was actually the Gutermann thread, like the embroidery thread that I used rather than proper whipping silk, so I'm really pleased the way that's come out. Both of these have had 2 coats of the Seymo epoxy put on them to seal the whippings. I tried my best to just get away with one, and I've got to the point where without a rod turning machine, I'm never going to be able to do that on wider amounts of, larger amounts of surface area that need to be done. And even though these are really thin, the butt sections of these rods, this would be this was too much. Same would be down here. I actually think in one case I did actually have to redo one of these. I can't remember which one now, because I made the epoxy mixture. I obviously didn't put enough hardener in there. What I really didn't do was I didn't pay enough attention to the 1-to-1 ratio, which is needed. So a real lesson learned is it's got to be super accurate, and I'm talking, counting drops. And I've now got to the point where if I'm putting, say, 5 drops of the adhesive or the main component, I put 1 extra drop, so 6 drops of the hardener, just to make absolutely sure. So one of them, it just stayed tacky the whole time. And on the butt section, I tried a number of different things to see if I could make it work and go hard, and I just couldn't. I was unsuccessful, and it got to the point where I had to strip the whole lot off and redo it. It was also the same story for the epoxy, which was around the eye on one of them, and I didn't do any experiments on that. It just stayed tacky. So what I actually ended up doing was I put another coat of properly mixed epoxy on top of it, and that worked. So I said earlier that these have actually had 2. Both have had 2. One of them technically has had 3 because it's had a really fine, almost curing coat to go on top of it. And that's it really. So, I think they've come up really well. Oh, sorry, I should also mention, so the handles had some work done on them. Both of them, I just used a mixture of cork dust and EVA glue to just fix any of the worst divots. The handle, the very base of the handle of this one, which I believe is the newer of the 2. I got both of these second hand. This was black when I got it. It was really messy. So I cleaned it up as much as I dared. You can see here where that filler is in there, but I just didn't want to rub it down anymore. I just didn't. I just felt it was enough. Then I put the U-40 or U40 cork sealant on top of it. If I, in this light, as I move, I can just about make out instances where, like, I guess right there where there's some of the EVA glue is actually on the surface of the handle. I don't care. This is a rod that's going to get used. I'm not selling it. This is my rod, so that's fine. So here, this is obviously the new cork. It's also been sealed. Yes, it's a slightly lighter shade. I can't do anything about that. It doesn't matter to me. One of these rods had the damage. That was this one. This was the main rod that I did the work on when I was filming. That was that damage. So glued that back in, and then I've put a little bit of the cork dust mixture on top of it to seal it. Probably more of the glue rather than the cork dust got in there, but it's solid. It's going to hold together. You know, I can open and close. This is solid. This feels great. This is going to lock the reel in. When I'm picking the rods up to strike, I know the reel's not going to drop off or anything, right? So really, really pleased. So yeah, going to call that a wrap in regards to this little project, but I am going to talk a bit about what these rods are. So these rods are obviously different. They are both branded as Tricast wands. They're different because they've got the different they've got different length handles. They were finished on the end differently. They've got different decals, yeah, and they've got different rings. And when I then put the rest of the rods with them, they start to be even more different. So if I look at the two of them, and I'm moving things around on the bed here, but if we look at the two of them with all of the bits, so what have we got? So this one, which I'm convinced is the older, you can see the tip sections are really long, yeah, whereas this one, I'm pretty sure the blank is identical, and the tips are a lot shorter. And they're typical Tricast, where they're typical Tricast where they're you know, they're put over, they don't push in. So a bit of history behind these. I bought both of them second hand, and I bought both of them second hand at different times online. So these wands, for me, I've always used wands when I was younger for fishing my local canal, which is the Gloucester and Sharpness Canal. Gloucester and Sharpness Canal is not your typical British canal, because it's about let's say 40 to 50 metres wide on average, and I guess out in the middle it's probably about varies, I guess, but between 4 and 6 metres deep, so it's a big canal. And in the sort of the 1990s, when we were fishing winter leagues and, well, summer leagues as well, but especially in the winter leagues, it was sort of typical fish the pole, and also you would fish on the bottom with either a bomb and or swim feeders. If you're on the right pegs, you could catch bream. I'm especially thinking around quite infamous stretches like Hempstead up towards Gloucester. And at that time, you know, there was a lot of winter leagues, team fishing, and one of the top teams was going to be the Shakespeare Super Team. There was also the Daiwa Gordon League. Won't talk about my team, we never did any good, but it was great fun. But the rod to use was actually this, which is a Shakespeare Sigma wand. So the idea of wands came out where a shorter rod with a very, very thin tip that could literally show any kind of take when even a tiny fish would pick up the bait. So if you look at this, these are the tips that are with the Sigma wand. absolutely microscopic on the tip section, super sensitive, and this was the go-to rod for fishing, you know, hard venues in the winter. And this one actually was passed on to me. It did belong to somebody from the Shakespeare Super team. I've never actually used it, and in my time when I was fishing the Gloucester Canal, my wand of choice was actually a really cheap Sealstar rod, which was about 2 meters, so 6 feet. Didn't matter. I mean, it was very cheap. It didn't matter because it was all in the tip, and the tip was just, I only had one, and it was, I remember it was bright orange fiberglass, and if a fish was anywhere close by and sneezed, it would have registered. Unfortunately, I've lost it somewhere between me moving all around the world, and I took my fishing gear with me. I've lost that rod. Doesn't matter, but I lost it, and that's actually why I looked for alternatives when I came back to live in the UK, and that's where I got these Tricasts from, because this kind of fishing isn't really that popular anymore. So the idea of, you know, hacking it out on a winter league on the Gloucester Canal versus going and fishing a commercial where you're guaranteed, even in the winter, to catch some fish and put a bend in the rod. This kind of fishing is just not that popular anymore. But these two rods, bit of interest, I think. So this one, which I'm convinced is the older one, I bought this off somebody, and they told me that this was owned by somebody from the Barnsley Blacks fishing team, and was built especially for the team when they fished the Division 1 Nationals on the Gloucester Canal, which I believe was in about the year 2000. I'm not entirely sure, but I tried to research it before I made this video, but I couldn't actually find the information. And I think the Angling Trust, when it merged, when lots of organisations merged to form the Angling Trust, I think some information went missing. But it sort of makes some sense, I think, because first of all, the finish on the rod, for example, you know, just let's put a rod together. Remember, this was all cork originally. Don't bother finishing the end. Let's just whack a plastic cap on there. That kind of thing sort of makes me think that might be the case. And these rings, I'm not sure I've ever seen these rings on a rod before, but anyway, these rings, yeah. But it's a fantastic rod. It's so sensitive, and these lovely long thin tips, yeah, just awesome. This rod I also picked up secondhand, and it's different, and I think this was probably the next generation, and this was probably the one that was then sold commercially. And it is a true, I'm going to call it a true wand. This is really a, you know, light line, light, small, potentially small fish, but of course can handle bigger fish if needed. But this is the same style of wand. And interestingly, I'm going to throw these over to one side. I've also got this rod, which is a newer Tricast rod, and this is called a pond wand. So this is obviously not the same as this, yeah, and this is more design. This is designed for, I think, for commercial fishing. It's pretty much a single piece rod, and then, you know, longer tips, again typical new style Tricast in regards to the finish. They're now using this blue rather than they're using the maroon for the whippings. Got a bit of gold in there, silver in there to bling it out. Got a modern handle. I think this is a Fuji. You can just buy these inserts to go in there. So, and this would be a lot meatier for, you know, slightly heavier lines, be a lot more comfortable with bigger fish. And I bought this actually for fishing small rivers, and I haven't actually used it yet. I've still got the hanging tags and everything for it, but it's definitely a newer rod and not the same. So yeah, so three wands there. So we got the original Shakespeare, and then we got the two Tricasts, which are the ones that I use regularly. And yeah, I think that's the end of my little sort of story of upgrading the two Tricasts and a little bit of history just to wrap it up. I hope you found this series useful.